You're listening to another episode of Rig Recon Live. I'm Bruce Quick alongside Jason Witmier. And before we get started today, make sure you follow us on social media at Rig Recon. You can find us on Instagram or Facebook. You can also find this podcast wherever you get your podcasts, including YouTube. And then most importantly, visit our website, rigrecon.com, for all the latest apparatus content. So another great episode today, guys. Like Jason and I mentioned before, it's all things apparatus focused. So what better guest to bring in than Larry Daniels, who's the VP of Global Sales for REV Fire Group. And today we're going to talk about maybe making the apparatus a little less complicated, talk about things like lead time and cost. But before we get started, Larry, why don't you give the end users a little bit of background on yourself and kind of what you do at REV Fire?
Great. Thanks, Jason and Bruce, for having me today. I'm honored to be here. I'm in my 33rd year in the fire apparatus business. Spent the first 28 or so of that with E1 before coming over to the REV Fire Group side. The role I have as VP of Global Sales is just that. I'm responsible for all the inbound sales for all 7 of our brands in the REV Fire Group, and it's quite an honor to be able to do that. We have an outstanding dealer network that we go to market with in North America and around the world, and it's just fun to be able to grow up and still be able to play with fire trucks.
Exactly.
Well, we are absolutely happy to have you, Larry. And I don't think, like anyone, not everyone likes to talk about themselves. So you're selling yourself a little bit short there. Larry has a long history in the industry. You already mentioned a number of years, but I think one of the unique things that you bring to the table is you've kind of done it all. You've had your hands on the shop floor. You've been in those engineering meetings. You've been in the sales meetings, and that's something important for our end user to realize. There is some huge experience in this industry that some people bring by having touched all of it and not just jumping into sales or something like that. So that's important, and I commend you for that.
That's a fair point, and I appreciate you bringing that up. As you say, people don't like to talk about themselves necessarily, but I did start at E1 as a body sander on second shift right at 33 years ago. And so, understanding the way fire trucks are built kind of from the ground up, it gives you a little bit different perspective. I think, just to be honest with you, I did a journey through our refurb shop for a couple of years. I did parts and inventory for a little while. Contract administration is where I really learned to cut my teeth on the apparatus side. I was exposed at that point in the early 1990s to our E1 dealer network and to just tons of customers that I still have contact with today, 30 plus years later. Started into the sales side of the business as a regional sales manager in 1998. And so for the last 25 years, in one way, shape, or another, I've dealt with the sales side of the business. I've done direct sales. I've been a regional sales manager, a director of sales. So just the relationships and the friendships, frankly, that you make in this business over that amount of time are incredible. And it's even better when you get to do something that you really enjoy doing in a business that you think a lot of.
Absolutely. We have a lot of fun with that part of it. We're going to dive right into a difficult subject. Things have changed a lot in the apparatus industry in the last 3 or 4 years, especially since COVID. We've seen costs rise rapidly. We've seen lead time go out just beyond control at this point, where people are waiting 3, 4, even 5 years for certain types of apparatus. Some of the things that have factored into that are beyond our control. Like we couldn't control the parts shortages that happened. We couldn't control the reduction of labor forces due to COVID. But there are some things when a committee is speccing a rig, there are some things they could do to help control that, to help reduce lead times. And I know that Rev has specifically taken some actions within their own companies to try and reduce those lead times and costs. But thinking from the standpoint of the end user, what are some of the things that they could do to help reduce that?
It's a great question, Jason. And, we are like every other manufacturer out there. We have lead times that are certainly longer than we would like to have those lead times be. In some value streams, we're 3+ years, just like everybody else is. And, the question right now is how do I get a fire truck quicker, and how do I get that fire truck at a better price point, right? Prices have gone up exponentially over the last 3 to 4 years, as you said. The labor issue has been an issue. I don't want to just kind of gloss over that. We, in most of our facilities, we've got roughly the same amount of people building fire trucks today as we had in 2019 or 2020. But the difference is that it's a different group of people, right? So we've lost a lot of tribal knowledge. We've lost a lot of tenured employees over the years. Some left during COVID and decided not to come back. We've had an influx of retirements. Just the workforce has changed. We hear it in every aspect of life. I talk to fire departments all over the country, and the fire departments tell us that the employees they're getting, the firefighters they're getting, are not the same work ethic, if you will, as they were in the past, and it's just a different starting point. So that's been a big challenge. The other thing that we've done is try to figure out how can we build apparatus quicker. So in each one of our facilities, we've done a lot with modular design on fire trucks. We've done a lot to cut down, if you will, the amount of time a truck spends in the final assembly line. At some of our plants, most of our plants, as a matter of fact, we have now a body prep line where a body is on a cart. And while it's on a cart moving down the line, we can do everything to that body. We can mount the doors, we mount the shelves, the trays, the lights. Everything on that body gets mounted with the exception of the water tank and the hose bed, so that when the body goes onto the chassis, it is that further along in the production line and it doesn't have to spend as long on the final assembly line. I oversimplify it, but you basically put the body on, you put the tank into the hose bin, and you button everything up and it's ready to go. So trucks that were spending 30 or 45 days on the final assembly line are now spending a week or 10 days on the final assembly line. It's not shortcutting the process. It's just moving that labor and that process somewhere else in the manufacturing facility to take advantage of the space and take advantage of the time. We build pump modules on dedicated pump module lines now and put those completed modules onto a truck. When I started in this business, we put a pump house on a body or on a chassis, and then we got inside of that pump house and tried to figure out how to plumb it. It's just not a good way to do it. It's safer for our employees to do things on carts and to assemble them before we put them on the chassis. The other thing that we've done across our brands is we've done the research to show what customers are buying, what are the options they want to buy, what are the options that are in our backlog, what's out there. And we've tried to streamline that ordering process for a customer by, again, modular design, packages of options, as opposed to picking one or two options at a time. You pick packages of options and seating or shelving or lighting, what have you, and it makes the process easier. If we can make the upfront process easier for the customer to specify the truck and the dealer to order the truck, in our world on the manufacturing side, we can get it from the upfront order process to engineering quicker, which gets it to the manufacturing floor quicker. It's not typically everything for everybody, but what we found is we've had departments that come to us with, pick it a 500-page spec. That's probably unrealistic, but a 200-page specification. And you say, these are all of the things that I want, all of the things that I need to do my job. And they specify every nut, every bolt, every wiring connection, so on and so forth. If we can take that specification and tell that customer, show that customer, I have a modular design fire truck that will get you 90% of that 200-page spec, then the customer just makes the decision, is that 10% something I absolutely have to have, or is it a nice to have? And if it's a nice to have, a lot of times they can say, wow, here's a different avenue I can go. And that not only cuts down the delivery time on the truck, it cuts down the engineering process, and it's a cost reduction as well. If I can get it through the facility quicker, into the hands of the firefighters quicker, it also comes with a cost savings as well.
Great points. We've done some previous podcasts where we talked to some apparatus spec consultants. And, one of the things we talked about is the knee-jerk reaction for everyone is, oh, I have this spec of a truck I built 20 years ago, and now it's time for a new rig. I might as well just match up to the same thing. Well, a lot's changed over 20 years. A lot of technology's changed. I think where we fall into a bad spot with all of us, and we're all in the fire service. Like everyone on this podcast, not only are we involved in the apparatus manufacturing or component manufacturing, but we've done some time in the fire service itself. And we were spoiled because we could take a compartment and say, well, that holds my Hearst tool and that tool's this exact size. So I need that compartment that is that exact size.
Right.
That's where I think you've developed some program units, if I'm not mistaken, where you can look and say, well, we can still accommodate everything that you wanted, but maybe you need to think about a little bit different way of storing it.
That's a really good point. And I will say this, at REV Fire Group, we have 7 brands of fire trucks, and all 7 of those brands of fire trucks have made their mark in the industry, if you will, by being custom fire truck manufacturers. And we're not going to get away from that. We're always going to have that custom lane, if you will, for that customer that says, I need this compartment, this size to do this thing. We want to build that truck. We don't have any intention of abandoning that part of our business. But for that department, like you said, that picks up that 20-year-old specification and says, wow, the last time I bought a truck, I paid $300,000 for it, and here it is. Can you build me another one? And the fact of the matter is, you just can't do that. The technology has changed, the manufacturing process has changed, the components have changed. The other things that we have to deal with outside of just those things, like EPA, NFPA, all of those things that change every so many years, it just doesn't allow you to do that. So we've been able to sit down with those departments, just like you said, and say, look, here's where we can be to meet this specification. And what it normally comes down to, Jason, is asking the question, what are you trying to accomplish? And normally when we can ask that question and have the end user sit down and tell us that, as you said, this Hearst tool has to go in this compartment, how do we get there? And we can usually come up with a way to do that in our modularly designed trucks that allow us some flexibilities. They're still custom trucks. It's just maybe not every nut and bolt customized the way you're used to.
I know you've got some program units that Rev offers across the different brands. You want to talk a little bit about what some of those program units are? Because the one thing that I think our end users sometimes lose sight of is, on average, our industry probably sells about 4,500 trucks a year. But that means there's anywhere from 5 to 6,000 specs floating out there annually, because they're not all going to get bought in the same year. That's a lot of work for a lot of people to be looking at. And sometimes a different salesman may have different levels of knowledge of the different product out there, and they may not come to a customer and feel comfortable saying, I want to push you into this product. Instead, they just bid the spec the way it was written to meet that spec. So I know you've got these program units that can help people get into close to what they want to have, if you want to explain that.
Yeah, our sales teams have to really be educated on the product that we build, and have to be dedicated to the department to sit down and go through those things with them. As I said earlier, we do not want to get out of that out of that fully custom fire truck world. It's where we made our mark and where we started. But we do, in our Spartan brand, for instance, we build an S180 model. An S180 model, there are 11 models of fire trucks that are customizable with different option content and all. And those trucks are available to deliver in about 13 months. So when you're thinking about the market out there, where people are quoting you anywhere from 3 years to 4.5 years to build a custom fire truck, there are, as I said, many models of the S180 that will meet just about anybody's needs, and you can have those trucks in about 13 months. So what we've been able to do is sit down with fire departments, educate them on those designs. And these are not the traditional, when you say program truck, people typically think of, you're going to build cookie cutter trucks, you're going to build them one after the other, and you're going to build them all alike, and you're going to force the industry to take. And that's not what this is about. As I said earlier, we've looked at what folks are buying. We've looked at what the option content is. In the S180 line alone, there are multiple cab sizes, there are multiple pump sizes, multiple engine sizes, independent front suspensions, steer tech suspension. So it's not your typical program truck where everybody says, these are the options that we want you to buy. We do that across our E1 brand with the Select series. So we introduced a Select series aerial model last year in a 75-foot, a 78-foot, and a 100-foot single axle, and it's been hugely successful. We'll be introducing the Select Series pumper line at the FDIC this year for the E1 brand. So we've taken that modular design and that new way of thinking about how to build and how to buy fire trucks and taken that across all of our brands.
Bruce, I know you had a really good pressing question for Larry, and I may have jumped you there, but go ahead with your question.
No, you're good. So, for end users who are curious, you order a new truck the next month. What's the fastest way you can get a delivery from Rev?
Well, again, the fastest way to get a delivery through REV Group right now is with that Spartan S180 line. That's about a 13-month delivery. We've got I don't want to jump the gun here, but we're going to be releasing a press release in probably late March or early April. We've got a large fire department in California that's traditionally been one of those departments that says, I want this and I want it this way, and here's why. And we sat down with them and educated them on a 180 version, a K180 version of that truck. And they just ordered 10 of them from us. And it's the quickest way for them to put trucks on the front line to do what they need to do to support their communities and their fire department. So
Right.
there's more to come on that, but we're getting more and more departments that are stepping up and saying, I need to understand how I can get the truck faster. And that's the best way to do it.
That's a great real world example of
It
someone
is.
who had a need, and yeah, they used to spec everything out to the absolute nut and bolt, and now they were worked into a product that they could get faster and probably less expensive. And that leads
Absolutely.
me to the next question is, in general, what are some of the ways you see to reduce the cost of something new you're purchasing?
That, it's a fair question. And it's a good question. Um, and there's not really a simple answer to that. I mean, costs have gone up exponentially as we said earlier. I think the simple way is really to look at some of the modular design trucks and some of the option content out there, and really as a consumer in my personal life, my wife and I, we look at when we're going to buy something, we we don't just go out and buy something because we have the money to do it. We look at, what do we really need? Whatever need we're trying to fill or whatever we're getting ready to buy, we look at what the options are out there, and we take a good hard look at that before we spend that money. And I think as stewards of municipal money, municipal funding and all, I think we're seeing more and more fire departments that are really doing that. We've got fire departments that have traditionally bought, certain options, and they look back and they say, I'm not sure I really need that anymore. Do we need to have that on every truck? Maybe every truck doesn't need to be the same. And those are just challenges that I think fire departments have to go through one on one.
What one other thing, just before you go into the next question, Bruce, that I wanted to bring up. So obviously, as a vendor, we try to stay neutral on this podcast. We try to bring facts to people. Of course, we would love to have you say, no, just spec everything safely because that's the best product. But in all reality, you have defaults in your quote system. And I think that's something that the end user doesn't realize. You go to a great show coming up, FDIC. We have a podcast coming out in FDIC, and you see all the latest and greatest and these new things. And oh well, FRC just came out with this cool thing. I want to have it. That may increase the cost. Number one, because it's new, but number two, because that OEM may not have worked with that product yet. So I think it's important for an end user to ask the OEM upfront, what are your defaults? What do you use the most? Because you're getting better pricing by buying more of it, and you're being more efficient at the build because you do it all the time. When we throw that odd part at you, that really slows down the build and can increase the cost.
That's a really good point, and it's an interesting point too, because I've noticed that over the last few years, where when you sat down with a fire department, um, there are certain areas where customers, fire departments have passion, right? Some of that is pump driven, whether it's a Hale, a Darnley, a Waterous, whatever it is. A lot of times departments have passions with that, and then sometimes lighting or something like that, they may be a little bit less passionate about. And we have had, we've sat down with fire departments, and when it comes time to build the truck up in the configurator tool, you come to lighting or whatever, and we've had fire departments now more so than in the past just go, what do you normally use? If I didn't tell you I want brand X, what would you put on the truck? So we've had more discussions like that. And as a sales guy in the field, what I always did was, I would tell people, I don't sell lights, I don't sell pumps. But if you want a recommendation, I'll recommend this brand because I know Jason Witmier. I know the guy that stands behind it. And if you have a problem, I know you can call Jason, or I can call Jason, and you can get that fixed. So I think a lot of sales reps kind of do that. They build relationships with the suppliers and all. And I know I've done that throughout my career, and you do become more comfortable. You do become more comfortable with the product because you know the people that stand behind it. From a manufacturing standpoint, it's the same way. As a manufacturer, we have hundreds and hundreds and hundreds of suppliers, and you have a small group of suppliers that you always hear brought up in the production meetings and all, because there's always shortages, or there's always issues, and there's always a problem or something. And we have another group of suppliers that is, you never hear any issues. If you need something expedited, normally they can help you with that. If there's an issue on the floor, they'll come in and help you with it. So you're exactly right. We all have those suppliers out there that we partner with, and they defaulted in the truck spec. So that is a good way to not only reduce complexity, but to your point, a good way to reserve money as well.
Yeah, and I want to circle back, maybe hit one more thing on the custom fire trucks, because I think that's still a big part of what you guys do. And, you've always had a lot of experience in doing that. So when it comes to the custom fire apparatus, maybe tell us about some of the biggest mistakes you see and, how you can avoid them.
Oh, wow. Biggest mistakes you see in custom fire trucks. I don't know. I think it's really, sometimes I think it's trying to do too much with one truck. This market is somewhat cyclical, and we went from, very small urban style trucks many years ago to the big rescue pumpers that, it was a rescue. When you built it and you set it on the front pad, or you set it in the delivery center for inspection, you couldn't walk in, you couldn't tell if it was trying to be a pumper, or if it was trying to be a rescue or what, because it was 40 feet long and 12 feet tall. And now the market seems to be trending back towards pumpers and rescues and tankers and aerials and that sort of stuff. So I think the biggest mistake is when people do try to do too much with one truck. And that's an opinion thing, right? Everybody, you can ask that same question of 50 people and you're probably going to get 50 different opinions.
Sure.
But from what I see is that when they try to make it too complicated, you try to do too many things with one truck. There's been a few years ago, there was an maybe not an initiative, but there was a trend certainly where departments were replacing two trucks with one. And in their mind, they thought it was less expensive to buy that huge super rescue pumper. But at the end of the day, there's a lot of money that goes into that from a maintenance standpoint. It's heavier, it wears out tires faster, it wears out brakes faster, longer wheelbase, harder to drive. That's my opinion. Is I think it's when they overcomplicate the truck and try to do too much on one truck.
And you're hitting on an important topic. So, the cynic would say, if you had an engine and you had a rescue, and now you bought an engine rescue, you got half of an engine and half of a rescue. I mean, that's a fact. You can't combine a fully functioning pumper and a fully functioning heavy rescue into one unit. However, there is a huge need out there, and depending on your department, an engine rescue might be appropriate, as long as you understand that you're not getting all of what you had in both rigs onto one.
Exactly.
So there's a bunch of narratives out there, and this is another, we like hitting some questions that are controversial or difficult at times on our podcast. There's a lot of narratives out there about profitability in fire apparatus. And we talked about the fact that the price has gone up exponentially in the last few years. So I think as you look at the background here, you can probably tell that both Larry and I are in hotels right now. And we're staying at the Ritz-Carlton because we're making so much money in fire trucks these days. I mean, obviously that's not true. Maybe you can explain a little bit what goes in that people might not understand on why these costs have gone up so much, and how it's not that the apparatus manufacturers are just raking in the cash at this point.
Yeah, first of all, I don't have your budget, so I'm not at the Ritz-Carlton, but I appreciate the sentiment. I appreciate the sentiment. But, one of the things that I think people lose sight of is the price of fire trucks has gone up quite a bit. They haven't lost sight of that, certainly. But I think what people have lost sight of is the fact that we talked about the 3-year backlog. When I sell a fire truck today, the customer, the end user, has a reasonable expectation that they're getting a value for the money they're paying for that truck. I, as a manufacturer, have a reasonable expectation that I'm going to make money on that truck. I have to be able to make money on that truck to be able to support that fire department and other fire departments down the road when there's a warranty claim, or they need parts, or they need service, or they want to come buy another fire truck. I need to be around to do that. One of the challenges today is the truck that I sell today at today's price, I'm going to deliver more than likely in 3 years. So I have to be able to account for the fact that 3 years from now, it's going to cost more to build that truck than what it costs today. By the same token, the other thing that gets lost is many of the trucks I'm building today were sold in 2022, 2023, heaven forbid, a very small sample in maybe 2021, when I sold trucks at that point at a reasonable price then, but the prices of everything that I'm buying today to build that truck has gone up by 10, 20, 30, 40%, depending on what the items are. And I, as a manufacturer, building trucks that are paid for by municipal funding, I can't go back to a city and say, hey, Mr. City Councilman, you purchased this truck 3 years ago for reasons beyond my control and beyond your control. I'm just now getting around to building it, and it's costing me X amount of more to build that truck. I need X amount of dollars more. As a manufacturer, I can't do that. I can't go get more money for those trucks. So we have trucks, that we've built that we've made very little money on. We've had trucks that we built that we've lost money on. So right now, we have to be good stewards of our business as well, and try to protect our business. We're a publicly traded company. We made more money last year than we made the year before last, but still, we're in a position where we have to be able to price trucks that we're not going to build for another 3 years probably, and be able to protect our business.
And there are Facebook communities out there where you see people who work on rigs. Just go out there sometimes and look at them searching for parts of something
Yeah.
like a name in the industry that's gone, American LaFrance.
Right.
I mean, it's critical. I know I'm a volunteer firefighter. I know how hard it is to raise that money to buy that rig. And I know that sometimes if you're sitting around as a volunteer in the station, you hear someone going, well, you want your apparatus OEM to make money. You think, I don't care if he makes money. No, you actually do, because you want him to stay in business, or else you're never going to service that rig.
Exactly.
Yeah, and I think it brings up another great point there. A lot of these trucks are staying in the fire service a lot longer than they ever have been. So, Larry, are there any proactive ways you can write your spec that helps you out with maintenance on the back end, maybe keep that truck in service longer?
I think to a degree, I think that working with the manufacturer that's reputable, and across our brands, we tend to use as many commercially available parts as we can, but we try to limit the proprietary stuff to the stuff that we actually manufacture for the truck, or we actually build for the truck, and try to make the pieces and parts of the truck as common and commercially available as they can. Now, we have a very large REV Fire Parts group that stocks thousands of pieces and parts for fire trucks. And we're in the parts business. But with that being said, to your point, if brakes fail on a 20-year-old truck, you need to be able to go to a truck stop or to a truck shop and get those parts and all. So we try to do as much with commercially available stuff as we can. We have the parts business that does extremely well and services a large portion of the fire service. But again, you need to be able to service your trucks when they're out of warranty, service those trucks when they're 15, 20 years old. And the best way to do that is with non-proprietary parts.
Absolutely. And I'll give a little plug to how this parts business works for some people. So you may have a gauge fail on a truck and someone says, well, I bought this truck from E1, for example, and it's an FRC gauge. Why can't I just buy the gauge off FRC? You in most cases you can. Where the difference is with someone like Rev Parts, they may have stocked a bunch of that part and have it sitting on the shelf. Whereas I would have to build it at FRC so you can get it faster. That's where the parts business really can come in and help you.
Exactly.
So as we hit the end here and wrap up, we wanted to give you an opportunity to talk specifically about your brand more. And when it comes to buying a fire apparatus or an emergency vehicle, what are some of the unique things a department might experience by making that purchase from one of the Rev brands?
Well, thank you. That's a really good question. At REV Fire Group, we have E1, Ferrera, KME, Spartan ER, Smeal, and Ladder Tower, and we also have Spartan Fire Chassis, which is the chassis of choice for about 36 other OEMs. So we're involved in a huge portion of the fire service market, and we're extremely proud of all of our brands and the ability to be involved like that. I will say that at Rev Fire Group, also the brands matter. I mean, if you look at those brands, we have dealer networks across those brands, and I think the single thing that makes Rev Fire Group unique is the dealer network. We have an outstanding dealer network. I meet people across the country. I meet people in our factories, and I tell them that the most important piece of the equation is the local dealer. And the reason I say that is, somebody comes to the factory, I meet them at a pre-construction conference, or I meet them at a final inspection, or I meet them at FDIC or something. But the dealer is the person that they're going to every day. When they have a problem, when they need a part, when their truck breaks down at 2 o'clock on a Saturday morning, they need somebody to call. They're picking up the phone and they're calling that dealer. And I think at the REV Fire Group, across all of our brands, we have the most outstanding, most knowledgeable, most professional, best dealer network in the business. And I think that's really what you get when you come to REV Fire Group. Not only a great fire truck, but a great relationship with a dealer that's going to support you for the long haul.
Excellent point and very well said. I couldn't agree with you more. When I was doing the fire truck stuff, I used to always say the same thing. Be standing at a show and someone would say, what makes you different than the guy, the brand P or the brand R next to you? The
Right.
dealer, the
Yeah,
dealer.
exactly.
And they have great dealers too.
Yeah.
But the dealer is what really ties you together.
At the end of the day, we're to a degree, we're using the same material, we're using the same motors, the same pumps, the same transmissions. So you have to have a great product to differentiate you from those competitors, which we do at the REV Fire Group. But what really stands above and beyond, case after case after case, is that dealer.
Yeah, great points there. And again, as we get to wrap up here, Larry, usually I open it up for any final comments to end the podcast. And then also, FDIC's right around the corner. I think we're about a month out, maybe a little less. And you mentioned some exciting stuff happening there. So I wanted to give you a quick moment to maybe pump some of that stuff as well.
We're very excited to be gearing up for FDIC. We've been working on that for several months. We have a large display this year. I think we're going to have 14 trucks there representing all of our brands. We will have a Vector North American fully electric fire truck there featured from Charlotte, North Carolina. There we have a Select Series E1 100-foot aerial there from Kittery, Maine. That's a first-time E1 purchaser. We have a tractor drone rescue there this year from Asheville, North Carolina. So we've got a lot of really outstanding product to show. And there's even a rumor out there that there may be a new TDA from one of our brands there at the show as well. So that's going to be exciting to see. But we've got a lot planned for FDIC. We'd certainly invite everybody to come around, shake hands with our folks, meet our folks, take a look at the product in the booth, and start building that relationship with the REV Fire Group.
Yeah, well, again, appreciate your time today, Larry, and I think it was a really great episode. We got through a lot
Oh,
of stuff, and I'm really excited to see how this one goes. So, again, you listen to another episode of Rig Recon Live. You can follow us on social media at Rig Recon. You can find this podcast wherever you get your podcasts. Make sure you catch up on all the latest episodes. And as Jason mentioned earlier, we have a couple new episodes coming out previewing FDIC. So, really exciting stuff there. Most importantly, visit our website, rigrecon.com. Until then, spec the best.